Phyllis Blees, today's host and president of the American Creativity Association. Welcome to The Creative Life, a new show of the American Creativity Association. We are coming to you live every other Tuesday at noon Hawaii time. The ACA's vision is a more creative life for all people, and its mission is to engage people in being more creative in their home and life and play and all walks of life. To that end, I'm very honored to bring you today as our guest, a preeminent creative thinker and teacher. He's a creativity and innovative consultant at Fortune 500 companies. He's an author of a book called Jack's Notebook. This is a business novel about creative problem solving. And he's a visiting innovative scholar at the University of Notre Dame. It is now my great pleasure and honor to bring you Gregg Fraley. Hi, Gregg.
Hello, aloha.
Aloha. So, Gregg, what's the essential takeaway of your message today for the audience?
Okay, I'm going to sum it all up in just a couple of sentences, but it has to do with the three C's. Creativity as a choice, getting to creative flow, and with that, creative habits, practices, and tools. And finally, all of that, all those habits, tools, practices, and habits, etc., inside of a project. So those are the three things: choice, flow, projects.
Great. Well, tell me a little bit about what you mean about that first C of creativity, with creativity as a choice.
Okay, so you have to understand that about half the people out there of any group that you would ever assess, generally speaking, don't believe they're creative.
Hmm.
People think that creative people are artists and singers and songwriters and musicians and painters and poets, and they don't think that they are of that ilk, and they don't have that talent for painting or drawing or writing or something, so they don't think they're creative. And so even for people who have a belief that they're creative, sometimes there is a doubt, a deep-seated doubt, like, yes, I'm creative, I can do some creative things, but am I really creative, and am I creatively effective? And so the first thing that you have to do to become more creatively effective is simply to choose it. So if you choose it, if you say to yourself, yes, I'm creative and I'm going to become more creative, then the brain starts believing it. And then you move on, your brain moves on to the question of, how do I become more creative?
Okay. Okay. So that's the first C of creativity, it being a choice, and taking that, really starting from within and believing in it. What about that second C of creativity? You said creative flow happens. And how does that come about? How do we work that into our life?
Yes, so creativity happens for everybody at some point in time. There's that wonderful moment when you have a great idea, for something you're up to. And it's like lightning strikes, you wish that you could put it in a bottle. And most people have the belief that you can't at all put it in a bottle. And that becomes difficult. And so people start thinking, well, I have creativity, but it's unreliable for me. And what can I do to have more creativity all the time? And how can I turn the faucet on? And let's go to that slide for a second. I have a slide number 2. The reason there's a little story that goes with this slide, and the story is, if you have a faucet that's outside your house and you don't live in Hawaii where it's warm all the time, you go outside in the middle of the winter and you try to turn one of these faucets on, and it doesn't turn on. It's either frozen or it's very rusty and water just trickles out. And then as you turn it on more often, as spring comes and summer unfolds, water comes out and it flows freely. So the message for that slide is, if you really want more creative flow all the time, you have to ask for it more all the time. And you have to try to achieve it more all the time. So it's a matter of practice. It's a matter of habit. If you're a writer, you should write every day. If you're a painter, you should paint every day. If you're a corporate innovator, you should think creatively about business problems every day. This is how you turn the faucet on and keep the water flowing, keep the creativity flowing through your brain and into your work.
Okay, so you talked about today's show is Creativity Unplugged, and you're talking, it sounds interesting. You're talking about unblocking the faucet, but not through something unique or unusual, catastrophic even. You're talking about a daily activity, a daily habit you just talked about. And I wonder if there's some examples that you could give us on this flow process.
Well, yeah. I'm just thinking a minute. We could go to the game, but before we do that, I want to talk about another principle, and then we'll do the game thing, which
Okay.
we talked about beforehand. But so a principle is, if you want ideas, you really need to be an idea person, and you need to have a lot of ideas all the time. If you really want ideas, when that meeting comes and say, hey, does anybody have any ideas for this problem, or does anybody have an idea for this creative thing that we're doing? What might we do with this? If you're waiting for that moment, and you don't practice the thought process of having a lot of ideas all the time, it's going to be hard to turn on the jets. So as a person, you should think about being more divergent all the time, more imaginative all the time. The pattern that we have in our meetings and our conversations with people day to day, and even in our own heads when we're trying to do something, is there's an idea that you have, and then you shoot it down, or you judge it. So it's idea, shoot down, idea, shoot down, idea, shoot down, and you never get into that flow. So you need to turn off the judgment in your head, and you need to put the pedal to the metal in the car, and press on the gas, and be more divergent, more imaginative. With a large quantity of ideas, you have a more high quality of ideas, and you have to do this over time. All right. So now, to demonstrate a little bit of that, let's do a game just between you and me. An audience could actually play along if they wanted to. But I'm going to say a word, and we're just going to go back and forth. I'm going to say a word, and then you're going to say any word that comes to your mind. And then I'm going to respond to your word, and then you're going to respond to my word. And that's how it's going to go. And by the way, this is really fun to do with groups of people. It's a little more intense when you do it. So this is advanced practice, Phyllis. All right. So I'm going to start my word. I'm just looking around for something to start with. I'm going to start my word. I'm going to say pen,
Paper,
pencil,
crazy,
Patsy Cline,
singer,
songwriter,
soulful,
Southern,
bell,
beautiful,
dreamy,
Gone with the Wind,
romance,
parasols.
Harry,
What was the word?
Harry, Paris,
Paris. Gay,
frivolous,
silly,
often,
frequent. Okay. All right.
fun,
Let's stop. Okay. You did well there, Phyllis. Thank you. Now let's talk about what just happened. First of all, you had a night, you had a laugh there. Is
Yes,
that is? Can I verify the laugh?
absolutely. And we should tell the audience, I've never done this before. I had no idea what the game, I only knew game. I didn't know what it was going to be. That was fun.
Right, and like I have to imagine it's a little bit intimidating to come up with something, even though you have a dictionary full of words you could have used. But
Yeah.
it's just to respond in the moment, you had to be in flow and you had to pay attention and you had to be right here in this conversation, because if you weren't, you'd get all, you try to overthink it and
Mhm.
you wouldn't just allow your brain to pop an idea or a word into your head. So when um so what were you thinking as it was going on? I'm curious.
I was thinking it's fun to be playful. I also had a tape in my head in your introduction to the game, having started a school for gifted children, and how unsafe it is to be a divergent thinker. And I'm thinking, I thought about the Divergent movie that came out in the last few years, and
Right.
that what a collateral process to our own acceptance of our creativity and making it safe for us to express it is to work in society to create safe workplaces and safe schools to encourage creativity rather than to put you in the back of the room, kick you out of the class, give you an F, and make you shut down and feel bad about yourself. Everything you are advocating for is rather on the fringe of the cookie cutter box life we live. And it's important to me to make this world safe for divergent, playful thinkers.
Boy, amen. You're reminding me of the work of Sir Ken Robinson, who I'm sure you've seen the TED talk of. But it's interesting that, society and education reward people who are very good convergent thinkers, who are very good at getting the one right answer. And that's, basically what grade schools and high schools and even colleges reward. But as soon as you sort of get out into the world and start doing things on your own, you start realizing the value of more divergent thinking. Because guess what? To create something new, to create a new company, to create a piece of art, to create a community project of some sort, you need ideas. And ideas come from more of the spontaneous part of your brain that we were exercising in the game that we just,
Mhm.
that's sort of speak silly game that we just did.
Yeah.
Um, and when I say habits and practices, you can practice that on your own. You could do that by yourself in the mirror in the morning. You could just start with something you see on your cabinet or you're on your shelf, and just try to go with the flow and get your brain into a flowish mode.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with writing. You can do, uh, Julia Cameron recommends doing what she calls morning notes, which are basically just a stream of consciousness writing. Another way to get you into flow. I'm sort of skipping ahead into tools and things, but
Can we put
um,
up that
let's,
habits slide and let people
this would
look
be the,
along?
yes, yes, thank you. This would be the right time for that. Thank you. You're a very good host, Phyllis, because you're keeping me on track here. I'm so excited about creativity and creative thinking and flow and all this that, I just get on a roll and I never stop. So we'll be here until about midnight.
Okay.
But let's get into habits. Okay, so I'll tell a quick story. The story has to do with Twyla Tharp, who is the woman sitting on top of that ladder in the visual on the slide. And Twyla Tharp is a choreographer and is based in New York City. And she does a thing. She's like 70 years old now, but she's choreographed many Broadway shows, including Billy Joel's Uptown. I think it's Uptown Girl was the name of his Broadway show. But she does a thing in the morning where she gets in a cab and she goes to her studio down in Soho. And she has a big empty room and she puts on a boombox. She turns on a radio so she won't know what the music is going to be. And she starts on the floor, curled up in like a fetal position. And then she proceeds to invent a dance based on whatever the music is. And of course, she videotapes this so she can look at it later. But it's her way of creating from scratch something completely fresh every day. So it's an illustration of a creative habit. So there are other important creative habits, and I'm going to run through them kind of zoom. Um, and you can stop and ask questions anytime you want, but the first thing is relaxation. When you are uptight about a big problem or a big opportunity or something you want to have ideas for, or you're confronted by a blank page as an artist or writer, relaxation is a great way to sort of break through and just let it be for a little while. And so relax when you're working as a creative person, but also when you're not working. So creativity favors the relaxed mind. So never forget to try to work relaxation into things. So there's one thing that a person can do to be about 50% more creative. And that is to write down ideas when they come to them. So everyone should have a notebook. So here's mine, and I use it every single day, every hour of the day that I'm up and not sleeping. And I keep it by my bed because I have ideas when, I'm in the middle of the night, I wake up and I'm thinking of something and I want to write it down. Notebooking is the one thing that can make you more creatively effective, like that, like 50% more. Boom, just like that. Okay, let's see. What's the next habit?
Just
Well, we
to
can
do it
skip
like that.
quantity of ideas because we've
Okay,
already done that. But
all right.
combinations is another thing. So when you're looking for a new idea, a fresh idea about anything, it's always good to look around to see what resources or factors you can pull together to impact things.
Mhm.
So, um, Henry Reese, the guy who invented the Reese's cup, he was making candy in his basement and he was running short of a particular kind of material to make peppermints. And all he had was chocolate and other things. And he looked around and he thought, oh, wait a minute, how about chocolate and peanut butter? So he put it in a standard cup, he covered it with chocolate, and that became the Reese's peanut butter cup. So it's a very, very simple combination, and he was the first person who thought of it. And over the years, that created a company that eventually was sold to Hershey for $4 billion.
Wow.
So simple combinations are a very powerful way to become more creative. Now, I think the last habit on the slide, if we're skipping ahead, has to do with um, putting all of your efforts inside of a project.
Mhm.
So here's what I mean by that. So if you're a writer and you don't have an aim with your writing, you might get up and write in the morning every day, but where is it going? A project is you want to write a series of short stories, or you want to write a book about using Play-Doh, or you want to write a novel. That's a project. And using tools and having the habit of more creative thinking and working every day inside a project adds up. So for instance, if you wanted to write a screenplay is about 100 pages, generally speaking. And it's, double space. So writing one page of double space type, that's not very challenging. Almost anybody could write one page of,
Mhm.
of a screenplay. But if you write one page every day in 100 days, just over 3 months, you have the draft of a screenplay. And that's the power of daily practice. It's the power of habit. Even if it's only a half an hour a day, it's possible to get a lot of creative work done by focusing it every day and putting into the daily practice and focusing your efforts on or inside of a project.
So Greg, what I'm getting from this is that when you say creativity lives inside projects, it's kind of like chop wood, carry water. It isn't so much an aha, it's showing up every day. It's those habits, and it's your intention. And if your intention is to write a screenplay, I have to say that's creative to write a
Hmm.
screenplay. But the getting of
Hmm.
it there is just your normal practice of reading, writing, arithmetic, and doing the things that are comfortable for you. And that adding them all up inside that project, you are being creative. So the journey is as important as the goal.
Yes. And people say, well, gosh, I showed up this morning at the page and I started writing and I wrote for an hour and it was like pulling teeth the whole way. Um, and that happens. But if you show up every day, one of those days, magic will happen and you'll get into a flow and you'll create something wonderful. But you have to suffer for that.
So the
Now, there
creative,
are tools that I want. I'm sorry.
no, go
There are
ahead.
some tools I want to
Let's bring
talk
that
about.
slide up. Right. Okay.
So we talked about notebooking. Um, we didn't talk about mind mapping or doodling, but that is a technique that I encourage everyone to look up on the internet and look at the YouTube about how to do it because it's very straightforward and simple. It's a technique developed by Tony Buzan, but it's a great way to, kind of think in a non-linear way, and it's very visual. I could show you an example real quick of
Oh
just one I
yeah.
did. And
Yeah, the
you can
mind
use
mapping.
color and
Yes.
so forth. So mind mapping is an important and I think really useful tool. We did a game earlier, and another useful tool is improvisational games. So learning improvisational games, again, YouTube is a great resource, or the written work of Viola Spolin is another resource. So I'm going to stop and let you conclude or ask questions or.
Well, I am wondering, we want to let the audience know that you're welcome to email us and get your questions in before Greg leaves for the day. And if we were going to sum up, Greg, this takeaway, we had the 3 C's of creativity, and that was the big takeaway. We started with creativity is a choice, creativity happens in flow, and creativity happens in projects. And it seems
Right.
to me that what's so accessible for everyone, which is the goal of the American Creativity Association, is a more creative life for everyone and to reach everyone. And you say, well, it's happening inside projects. So the third of the 3 C's of creativity, that creativity happens inside the project. You're doing, I'm doing, the staff at ThinkTech are doing. That's what we need to know is showing up. And part of showing up, Greg, I know you're a big advocate for well-being. You talked about relaxation. And we really want to stay with a happy and a confident heart, and to do all the self-care we can, especially in a time of COVID, crossing borders, crossing states, crossing the globe, to really help each other find that place of safety and hope and joy from which to show up every day, chopping wood, carrying water, and being creative. Um, that
Yes.
that kind of helps get to your takeaway for today inside of who we are and our project, whether it's homemaking, working, or playing.
Yes. And what you're talking about, it seems to me you're talking about being creative. And that reflects back on our takeaways of the day, which is choosing it, because you're going to be it if you choose it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg. And people can find you. I know that our wonderful staff at ThinkTech has been showing people your URL at greggfraley.com. You can reach us at the American Creativity Association at actcreatively.org and show up 2 weeks from today, every other Tuesday. We will be here same time, same place, noon Hawaii time. And our next guest will be Anne Medlock, who is the founder and creative director of a project called Giraffe Heroes. And she'll have a lot to share with you in terms of being creative and doing it in your everyday life inside your project. So mahalo, Greg, and aloha.